no. Let's do this right. Magnificent morning, wonderful afternoon, and excellent evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And here we are again, once again, picking a topic regarding communication, which is so very important. We use communication every day of our lives, and we forget that every person understands and perceives communication in a different manner. I could say one word, like I use the word house a lot because I was taught that when I was learning to teach reading comprehension. So we're going to use it again. If you grew up in an apartment, a house would be just a few rooms of your apartment, the kitchen, the living area, and you think everyone lives in a place that has houses above them, below them, and beside them, because that's how apartment buildings go. But if you grew up in a big farmhouse with lots of land and lots of animals, you're going to think a house is just that. So when you hear a house, you don't think about an apartment, or you don't think of a townhouse, which is the houses connected together with, and yet separate families living in them. So that's one way of looking at how we perceive and our perception of a word. This goes for every word in the world. It happens between me and Victor, how he sees it. And although we speak English, we may think very differently when we are using different words. This is the whole topic of the conversation today. We spoke about it on Tuesday. We're going to go into it more today. And I think I had Victor here Tuesday. I can't even remember. The past few days are a blur because of the challenges I have had to deal with, where I actually began to sort of lose it, but I got it again, and then I lose it again. So I don't know what's going on in life, except that life is like a roller coaster with its ups and downs, and it can happen, an up and down can happen within seconds, or it can happen in minutes or in hours, but that's what life is all about. And now that I've spoken so much and I have not shared the show out, I'm going to ask Cameron. See, what's really cool about this show, it's very international today. We do have the United States, we have Pakistan, and we have India. We have people who speak English only. We have people who speak Hindu and people who speak Urdu. And I think Cameron probably speaks about 10 different languages because of what is in Pakistan. Same with Shivali. So when we communicate, we need to be able to say, I do not understand, if you don't understand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make you look stupid. It just actually makes you look more intelligent. Cameron, take it away.
Thank you so much, Carla, and I'm very happy to be with Victor and Shivali once again, talking on the subject of perception and perspectives. I feel that it's important to highlight the role of subjectivity when we are discussing it. Subjectivity in the sense that everyone interprets their reality in their own unique way. And Carla, you gave a great example of the word house, and how someone would perceive a house would depend on their own experience in living in that particular setting. So therefore, when we look at this perception, perspective on life, I would like to start with the word success. Ask anyone on this planet, do you want to be successful? And majority would be saying yes. Um, are you successful? Many would say yes. However, all the yeses would have a very different flavor, different meaning, different um, dimensions. And I find that the word success may be universally accepted as a very good outcome to have, yet it means different things to different people. Likewise, when we discuss justice as a word, it's a huge word. And everyone would say, yes, we would like to live in a just society. And you can have a referendum, and 99% would be saying that, yes, we want a just society. But the question is, how many different variations can we have when we speak of this big word called justice? So therefore, it is important to acknowledge in our role, in our leadership role, that when we are working with a group of people, for instance, in a community or in a project or in a work organization, even in your family, you will find that everyone speaking of the same subject would have a perspective on that, would have a viewpoint, would be very different from your own. And only when we are willing to acknowledge that what I know is my perspective on a subject rather than I having knowledge on a subject. It is only my narrow perspective on a particular topic or subject or issue or whatever matter it is that I'm dealing with. So I feel that the ability to relate to others and learn of their perspectives as well would give us a sense of a multi-dimensional reality. And once we get to see things from a multi-dimensional lens, then we start to ask, hey, I don't understand that, as Carla, you rightly said. And a conversation and a dialogue becomes much more constructive when we suspend judgment and we listen to each other's perspective and what is motivating that view, where is it coming from, and in doing so, we can not only build greater tolerance, but peace in society. So we must acknowledge that when we speak of difference and diversity, we are also speaking of diversity of perspectives and perceptions.
And I think what you say is so very important because that's true. And we forget that. And I had a conversation with a very dear friend yesterday. And he was saying something, and I was saying something, but somehow it didn't get communicated properly. Or I don't, yeah, on both sides. I didn't always understand him, and I don't feel he understood what I was telling him. So we're on a break for a tiny bit. It will change. But again, that's perspective and perception. What I think I heard him say and what he thinks he said to me could be two completely separate topics. And I find this very fascinating. I didn't realize it until just recently. Let's get another lady's point of view. Shivali, what do you want to say before we go further?
Actually, I'm confused. Okay, I'll be very honest about it. I've been trying to figure out perspective and perception. Is there really a difference? Because already Kamran has already pointed out that based on our personal experiences of life, each one of us develops a certain perspective towards a particular situation. For example, he gave the example of success. What does success mean? Okay, everyone wants success, But what is success means different things to different people. For example, to me, success would mean having a lot of money, you know, but for another person, it could be something else. So I would like to actually ask the panel today that how will I distinguish between perception and perspective? I think they are both more or less the same. Maybe perspective will be a particular viewpoint, and therein we need to respect each other's viewpoints also, so that there's effective communication and healthier relationships, etc. And perceptions are something we could be assuming also, based on a particular situation or based on a personal experience. So, frankly speaking, I'm a little confused. So, if the panel could, kind of elaborate more, maybe Victor could also say something on this, because I'm actually confused.
What is it that confuses you about what we were just talking about?
No, it's the two terms, it's the two words. That why these two words, like we do read about this online also, perception and perspective. Is there really a difference, or is there just a thin line between the two?
Interesting thought. Victor?
Good morning. Good morning. A perspective can be a synonym for one's world view, and it's generally applied to how you are. Your perspective may be a male perspective, maybe a female perspective, but it is a position that's very broad, and it has to do with how you see what you see things through, right? A perception is event driven. Your perception of a particular thing, your perception of something that happened, your perception of a person. But perspective, in a lot of ways, can be subconscious, whereas perception is conscious. And I can go on and on and on, because this is an area in which I consider myself a specialty, because perspective has to do with your mind. And your mind really operates as an autopilot in most people. Unless you take the time and the energy to reprogram your mind, to recondition your mind, to use your conscious mind to reprogram your subconscious mind, then your perspective will sneak up on you. And your perspective will cause you to perceive things a certain way. One perspective that seems to me to be prevalent in my world, and again, this is colored by my mindset, is this idea of being victimized, of being underserved, of being marginalized. People, when they perceive things as that way, it's because of their perspective that they carry around subconsciously. To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you had a stomachache and you went to an herbalist, they're going to give you some herb. You have a stomachache and you go to a surgeon, the surgeon's going to want to perform surgery. You go to a stomachache and you see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, they're going to want to talk to you to find out where the genesis of your malady is. So your perspective is broad, and your perception changes from one event to another.
Interesting. Very good. Kamran, I saw you nodding your head. What are you thinking?
I would take cue from Victor's remarks and say that perception is the cause which gives rise to a point of view we have, and that is a perspective. So, for example, if you look at the recent debate going on abortion, and the two schools of thought that are very, very strongly debating this area, the right to abort or not. And if you were to look at the debate itself, it's a clash of perspectives. Where are they coming from? A perception that has roots in experience and beliefs, Shivali, as you rightly mentioned. So it's a paradigm. Perception is stemming from a paradigm which is giving you an output which you then articulate very clearly to the world itself. So if I want to understand someone's perspective, I would want to go back asking as to what led them to have this perspective and what experience has informed this viewpoint that they're holding so dearly. And in answering that, it will be their interpretive ability of events which came through the paradigm, and that perception is what created a sense of reality that led to a viewpoint. So if I claim that this is an unfair deed on someone's part, I've taken a viewpoint which is stemming from my belief sets, my paradigm, which gave me a perception of that. So I see perception as the cause of a perspective, which one then articulates.
Interesting. Shivali?
I'm still confused. I'm trying to figure out.
What is
one thing that I'm getting clarity from what has been said just now, that whatever is the perspective with which we are dealing with, whether it's mine or some other person's, the source lies in their perceptions.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I'm understanding.
Yes.
And what Victor said, that I think he mentioned about that something being very deep-seated, coming from the subconscious mind. That is what he's saying. The perceptions are actually deep-seated. Am I right, Victor? Did I understand you correctly? That the perceptions are, yes?
Well, partially.
Yes.
Your perspective is your view of how things really are. And like, for instance, I know that there is this concept called fairness, but I also know that it differs from one person to the other, right? So my perspective is that there is no real fairness. There is no unbiased idea of fairness. That's my perspective. So when I evaluate something, or when I look at a particular event that someone else thinks is fair or unfair, well, I'm probably not going to think of it the same way that they do, and I understand that. So I tend to stay away from concepts that are not as concrete as what I'd like them to be, and I find myself simply honoring what somebody thinks, simply honoring what someone believes. Because it is what someone believes, just like it's what I believe, that governs the course of my life. And I discourage individuals from believing or holding a perspective that doesn't serve them. See, your perspective is very, very personal. I'd have to ask you about your perception, and you'd have to articulate that to me. But your perception is going to depend on your perspective.
It's actually,
it's more like a chicken and the egg scenario. Although I must say that perspective is expressed, in my view, and perception is the meaning I'm giving to an experience that I'm having.
Okay, yeah.
That's in my
right, which validates what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that perception is event driven. You can perceive something that went on. You can perceive an idea, some idea you just heard of, but your perspective is going to determine how you actually perceive it.
Oh, okay. I mean, so I can see the confusion that Shivali also has, but I feel we can get caught up in the semantics of it as well. And frankly, if one was to take a view, for instance, I liked what Victor said, that if your perspective is not serving you, it is important to re-examine the roots of it and make the necessary shift in order for your life perspective to work for you. I think that is very important. And I find that new knowledge oftentimes creates a change in perspective. New knowledge. And for instance, if we look at Ukraine as an example, and I listen to a channel which is RT, a Russian channel, and listen to their perspective, and then I listen to the European channel, Deutsche Welle, for instance, or CNN, I get different perspectives. And what happens there is that this new knowledge gives me a synthesized version of a perspective, which I might be able to present. And at times you can see that both, both parties may be saying different things for reasons that are very true for them. And you actually enrich yourself through that mature understanding. And this subjectivity is what is very, very important to recognize in all human relationships. Because if we are not going to understand each other, we will only judge. And when we start judging people into boxes, whether this is right or wrong, fair or unfair, if we draw those conclusions, they are the ones that inhibit connection and creating of a bond, which is based on understanding that concludes that we agree to disagree. I think that is the most mature and the most healthy way of managing relationships, to agree to disagree, having understood each other and each other's perspectives.
You know, when you talk about, if you were to talk about knowledge, what you said, when you learn more, your perspective may change. It starts me to thinking about a process my coach told me about called the domains of knowledge. Yeah. Now, there are 3 domains of knowledge. And if we were to create a pie chart or create a big circle, and we took 1/3 of that circle and shaded it, that's going to be the things that we know, right? And if we shade another part of it, there's going to be the things that we don't know. So when you add the things that you know and the things that you don't know, you get a small sliver of the complete totality of knowledge that exists. Now, what do you suppose is in the other 2/3, 75% of this imaginary circle? See, there's things that you know, and you could tell me something that you know. And there's things that you don't know, and you could tell me something that you don't know. Like you might not know how to fly a plane. You might not know how to stand on your head. So you got the things that you know and the things that you don't know. But if you think back about what you said a moment ago, that as you learn things, your perspective change. Well, as the things that you learn in the future, they're in that huge part called the things that you don't know that you don't know. You don't know that you don't know them. And the difficulty is that the things that you don't know that you don't know, they don't exist as far as you was concerned. That's why you are concerned. So when you talk about the different cultures that you were just speaking of, well, of course, when you learn more about a particular thing, you're going to have a different perspective. Historically speaking, we have changed our relationship among people of other groups because we learn more about them. And without getting too political, we thought things about people that were a different color from us. We thought they had certain characteristics, so we ostracized them for a particular reason, and we put them in a different section because we didn't know anymore, right? But now that we know, those of us that mean well, now that we know, we stop that separation. We stop that ostracism because we know that the only difference between me and some other guy is I happen to be better looking.
So here we can say that means now something which is coming out of this is that that perceptions could also be including what we are assuming. It may not be the complete reality. It's like we assume things.
It couldn't be, really. It couldn't be the complete reality because you don't know what you don't know. And just because you don't know it doesn't mean that it's not real. And I apologize for interrupting you.
And can I add something? When you're speaking about knowing and not knowing and all of this, Victor, I'm only bringing this up because we've talked about it before. I want you to slow down your speech. There could be people listening to the show who don't understand the words we are saying because they are in English and they are not used to listening to English being spoken by you or me. Same thing could happen in Hindi. Someone could be speaking in Hindi about something, and Shivali may take the word to mean a different word, and you get a completely different meaning. My conversation last night was a very important one. And I have to admit, as it was going on, I was expecting to call about a delivery from Home Depot. Was I completely listening to that person, although it was very, very important I was? 90% I got. The other part was I was waiting for Home Depot to come back and say, oh, I'm ready to talk to you. When that happens, we don't always listen to what is being said, and we do not hear what is being said. Was it the fault of my friend? No. Was it my fault? Yes and no. Yes, because I didn't get off that other line quick enough to listen to him. But also no, because I didn't say to him, hey, I don't get this. What are you saying to me? And if I had stopped and said that, there may have been a totally different conversation, because I would have heard something differently. The problem is, to bring in the reality of this, we don't say, hey, is this what you are saying often enough? We don't repeat what we hear to make sure we understand it. And there's a certain gender that doesn't want us to say it. And then there's another gender who says, I need to say everything that's in my mind. And that causes problems. So is communication easy? I don't think so. I think it's a lot more difficult than we give it credit for.
Yes.
And it's the miscommunication that causes all the wars and all the problems in the world. I can't believe there is one person in the world who doesn't want to be loved. There isn't one person in the world who doesn't want peace. But are we really speaking the same language, even if we think we are? Comrade.
Yes, thank you for shedding light on the words and how they mean different things to different people. Here, a couple of thoughts were coming to my mind, that perception leads us to feel and experience fear. Like success is different things to different people. Fear is another very huge debilitator, keeps us in mediocrity or doesn't allow us to venture out and discover our potential. So for instance, fear of flying, fear of swimming, fear of initiating something that has never been done before by yourself, and fear of falling, all of those fears that we have, how factual are they? They're mostly perception based. And one takes a viewpoint, oh, no, if I go swimming, I'm going to drown. If I go on an aircraft, it's going to crash. I'm going to die. I'll be helpless. So fear is one massive outcome of our perception. And we take a view that no. And parents destroy their children, some of them, by being overprotective. And why are they being overprotective of their kids? Because they're afraid that, if we go to that campsite, there are snakes, rattlesnakes, and oh my God, if my kid is bitten, oh no. And what happens? You lose that opportunity for growth, particularly in the child's life. And I find that it's all perception-based. Fear, the acronym that I've really adhered to and I like a lot, is false emotions appear real. Anything that appears real is a perception. So we have
Shivali.
And what is reality?
Yes. I think that
you listen to people like Abraham Hicks, you'll hear, oh, your reality is what you create in the world. You can create abundance or you can create poverty.
Yeah.
You can create joy or you can create sadness. What do you want to create? And from that point, the world becomes your reality.
Yes.
And your reality, Kamran, although we have a lot of things in common, is probably very different from mine, Shivali's, and Victor's. It's just how it goes.
Sure, sure. Victor.
Yes. Oh, Shivali, you really said an all-encompassing statement at the beginning of our discussion. I want to know if the dialogue so far isn't moving you any closer to creating the distinction between perception and perspective. And I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about those two things because I think we have to nail those down on specific. I mean, you have to specifically nail those down. Otherwise, I don't think that the discussion is a win for you. Can you share about what
I
you
don't
have
have
picked
a
up?
complete, I will not say I have a complete clarity yet. I will admit I don't have the clarity. But when you people are giving examples, yes, I can relate to a lot of things. Like, for example, this concept of, perception, like the example of abortion, for example. How different people, different communities with different religious beliefs or the mindsets are actually having various perspectives based on that. This is what was striking me at that moment. And perception would be probably that fear thing which is coming up. That, for example, someone who's very God fearing. So he would say that, no, you don't do this because this is not right. That is his perception that God gets upset. Now, this is just my childish, or you can say a very simplified way of looking at it. So I will say, Victor, that I don't have a complete, what should I say? I cannot, like if you ask me, Shivali, can you clearly define what is perception and what is perspective? I think they overlap still for me. It's still overlapping.
Yeah, I believe that they do. And one of my favorite words, because it seemed to permeate everything in my life, is also applicable with perception and perspective, and that is nuances. There are so many nuances. Many things have to be extracted in context. And context is difficult to identify, difficult to articulate, because while we use words, right? When I was a boy in school, they said that a sentence was a group of words that expresses a completed thought. And then later on, I come to realize that what you feel depends on what you think. And you can see how the interface of the thoughts and the feelings and all these nuances, perspective and perceptive, it really is becoming clear that if you were to try to actually draw a distinction, a definable distinction, I think we're all going to run into trouble. If we can underlie all of our thoughts, all of our processes with the fact that our feelings, we don't just use words. Our words generate feelings as a result of the thought that's communicated with the words. So if we could learn to be more accepting, or to take a couple of seconds tick before we respond to what we hear, whatever the perception is, whatever the perspective is, I think ultimately we can improve our communication. And ultimately, once we improve our communication, we can improve our world. So perspective, perceptive, it's got to get the nuance. Got to get the nuance of the moment.
Yes, I understand the nuances. It's one of my favorite words I use with my students also. Like, like if I ask them, they ask me that, okay, what does this mean? I said, the meaning is this, but like it has various nuances according to the situation in which you want to apply that word. So that word may not be applicable in all situations. So the meaning might be applicable. So that is known as the fine nuance. Yes, I understand this. I can completely relate to this.
Good, good. We're moving forward. We're making progress.
Thank you.
And again, progress. What does that mean?
Right.
This
There's a
point, I would
guy
like
there.
to
Yes,
recommend an exercise. I would like to recommend an exercise to everyone listening, which is that whenever we read a book, we refer to a dictionary only when we come across an unfamiliar word, and that, on average, tends to be every third or fifth page of a book. Now, my question is, how come when we read through 5 pages and only referred to one word, are we saying that we've actually understood all the other words from the author's perspective? And frankly, a lot of assumptions have taken us through the 5 pages, which means we may not have gathered the value of the ideas contained in the book just because we have colored the uh, thoughts with our own perception. So, my advice to everyone really is to make a list of words that you use every day, 5, 7, 10 important words. And, so you can list vision, courage, leadership, responsibility, caring, love, all those words that you use in your everyday language, and then look them up in the dictionary and ask yourself, is your prior understanding matching the one that the dictionary is saying? Because each word has several perspectives. And if you notice, there's a word for which I'll give you the meaning: effort directed to an end. Effort directed to an end. It's a lovely meaning. And I ask people, what is the word? I mean, you use it every day. Tell me what the word is. And people struggle to get to that word. And it is as simple as work. Work includes effort, it includes direction, it includes a goal. All these three encompassed in one word. And it is normally, work is perceived as 1/3 of it, i.e., effort. Oh, he's asking me to work, we put in effort. No, effort in a direction to achieve an end. Likewise, there are other meanings to the word as well. And those different meanings and shades of meanings are the perspectives. And then the next task is, after you've written the meanings of the word, to ask yourself, when was the last time you did that or used it? And give an example. And once you've got that example, then ask yourself at what level, because there is no end to the depth. Jesus Christ loved, and so have I. But at what level? What was the depth of that love? I mean, and that is how we grow as people. I find that our personality is closely linked with the words that we adorn ourselves with, we use in everyday terms. But if we are getting deeper um, understanding of those words and we are living them with a much more magnified purpose and meaning, then our personality grows with that. So I'm so glad that the nuance came through, the perspective, the perception, because words are loaded. They can build peace and trigger a war. It's how we use those words.
And how the other person perceives the
Perceives them.
word.
Yes.
I mean, even the simple word peace can have a different meaning for different people. The word sit. I'm sitting on a chair now. My feet are on the ground. If I was in India, I may be sitting on the floor, cross-legged, and that would be sitting. And that would be all I would do if I was in India in a certain situation. Different words have different meanings.
You mentioned peace, Carla, and I came up with a recollection of the meaning that I really liked. And I'll share that with you. And it struck me as an interesting way of looking, an interesting perspective on peace. It said that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice. Now, it's such a loaded statement. Yeah. And again, it has to be unpacked. It really has to be unpacked.
And what does justice mean?
Exactly, it's loaded.
Justice could mean so many different things.
Absolutely.
Depending on who you are speaking with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, forms of government will give you an example. I mean, presidential form or the parliamentarian form or a benevolent dictatorship. I mean, Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore is rated as a very great leader who transformed Singapore in the space of 50 years. And he was not democratic by any means. Now, the question is, even when you look at the word democracy, it is played with so often, but it has a different expression in different cultures and societies.
Yeah.
There's a certain philosophy that drives democratic thinking, but it's not just the voting that we're talking about. The democratic philosophy has yet to be understood by those who seem to be benefiting from the fruits of democracy. I mean, why is it that China doesn't have democracy, but it does have a market economy? So these are perspectives. We are all going through different forms of perspectives.
Well, in the United States, and Victor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, when I think of the word market, I think about going to the grocery store, to a Giant or Publix or whatever. When people from Pakistan said, "Oh, I need to take my wife to the market," they're talking possibly of going to a street store, street village and shopping there. I would have never thought of that. And you guys would haggle. We don't haggle. You're told this is the price, that's the price, and that's it. You don't buy it. You don't argue with someone and say, "Oh, but it's really worth 50 cents. I don't want to pay $1. But, they're not going to change the price because I'm saying that. Shivali, you're very quiet now.
The market word actually triggered something. In India, it's very common for people to say, "I'm going marketing." I said, "You're not going marketing, you're going shopping." You think it means the same thing. They say it means the same thing. I said, "No, it doesn't mean the same thing. Marketing means you are into salesmanship, or you are advertising the product." I said, "No, it's okay. The common people understand what we are saying." So that marketing was reminding me of that. It's shopping and market. Again, it's the perception. The way they look at, each one is looking at the word. So, yes.
Returning to communication briefly. In some cultures, in some environments, it is the responsibility of the sender of the message to make sure that the receiver of the message understands the message. And yet, in other environments, it is the receiver of the message that takes the responsibility for understanding the message. Now, you could see the difficulty you'd experience if someone who believes that they're sending the message and they have to send the message right is communicating with someone who is receiving the message and they're taking the responsibility for whether or not the message gets misunderstood or not. Different cultures do that different ways, and only through knowledge, the part that for what I just said might be a part of what you didn't know that you didn't know. And now that in fact I'm introducing you to the idea that it's not always your job to make sure that your message is clear. Sometimes it's the other person's job to make sure that the message is clear. So being introduced to that idea, that is also going to give you some different thoughts that you didn't have before if you didn't know that. I found that out through a book I read called The Outliers, and there are so many other nuances in communication. That's just one of them. Nevertheless, I still take the responsibility when I'm sending a message to make sure that the person I'm sending it to, I'm sending it in a way that they understand. If they like text messages, I'm going to send them a text message. If they like voice messages, I'm going to send them a voice message. And I'm going to do that because I feel responsible to get them the information that I'm sending. So consider those two different forms of communication and, comment on that.
Yes, this reminds me of something, that I feel, I have always felt that voice messages are better. Especially when all this WhatsApping and all started, I felt a lot of miscommunication started also. And then I said, okay, words don't have emotions at times. So you could be, answering or saying something in a very simple, straightforward way, whereas the other person has perceived it in a very different way altogether. And that could lead to miscommunication. I think I've experienced this a couple of times. So I always felt that speaking to the person is always better than simply texting.
Well, yeah, plus speaking, you can interpret emotions from the tone of the voice. Someone years ago said that 93% of communication is not the words that you use. Well, in that 93% is the tone of your voice, is the pace of your voice. In my world, a voice message is better than a text message. However, I have found that in other people's world, I call them on the phone, I leave them a voicemail message, they respond to me with a text message. So the next time I want to talk to them, I send them a text message.
I just saw a quote. You are not responsible for the versions of you that exist in other people's mind. This also goes with communication. I may say something and the person may not like it or may not even really understand what I said. But am I responsible for that other person's mind or am I responsible for what I say? If that person doesn't say to me, I don't understand, what are you talking about? There's no way I can make some clarity. What do you think, guys, about that?
My thoughts, if I may just quickly reflect on it, I think it's a very powerful quote because no matter what you do, if you are out there to please everyone, you're going to be in real trouble. You never even try to do that. I feel that you've got to have a persona which is very clear. Some will like you for saying whatever you do, believing whatever you do, and some will not. But the one thing that you really ought to be very mindful of, I think, is respect. Do not in any way try to behave in a manner that is offensive or can be in some way taken as ill-mannered. So you could make a mistake in so doing. So I suppose if you are talking about your universal likability, forget it. But universal respect you can attain. And I would like to distinguish between these two words also. That popularity is about likability. And respect is where you say that, look, half the things he does or says I don't like, but I do respect the fact that he's coming from a place of integrity.
True. And when you're talking to someone who's close to you and they don't understand, how do you change that? How do you turn it into communication? Because I can't get into Shivali's head, and Shivali may say something really totally off the wall to me, and I'm like, where did the heck did that come from? And there needs to be some explanation. There must, in order for us to be speaking in the same language. How do we get to that point that we really understand?
My perspective is this. I know and I understand that when I'm talking, no matter who I'm speaking to or what I'm doing it for me. There's something that I'm getting out of whatever it is I'm saying or doing. And it's selfish. And it is not, I don't embrace selfishness, I just acknowledge selfishness. Thinking of myself that way, it helps me understand that when others are speaking, when others are doing whatever it is that they're doing it for their benefit, their ultimate good. If it turns out that something they say or something they do benefits me or gives me a warm fuzzy or anything, I look at it, or even offends me, and I quote the word offense because that's another story there all in itself. I tend to believe that if something is coming to me that's not making me feel good, it's not because of the other person, because the other person is too busy navigating their life, navigating their mind, navigating what they're doing, so that it would be awfully difficult for them to try to effect something in me when they don't even know me. They're trying to just simply be themselves. So I'm very unlikely to be moved adversely or acutely by anything that someone else might say or do. And I know that's a tall claim to make, but I've worked on it for years and years and years, because for many years, every day of my life, I went up and down the emotional roller coaster based on whatever stimulus I was receiving at the time, until I came to realize that whatever Shivali is saying, she's saying it for Shivali. And for me to interpret it in a way that doesn't serve me, it's kind of foolhardy.
True. But at the same time, that's going to happen regardless, because our minds are all slightly different. And our use of words are always slightly different.
But the big deal is you get the most use out of your mind. Your mind is there for you, and use it for you. And don't use your mind to create something that's going to make you feel bad, because that's on you. Really.
Shivali.
I'm sorry, Shivali. I keep doing that.
No, it's okay. It helps me also to enhance my understanding. I think intention also plays a big role. Like what Carla was asking us, that, about the communication part, that how do we make it happen? Then the intention has to be there to make it happen. But yes, at the same time, people pleasing shouldn't be a part of it. Like, we are not here to please people. You know, you are maintaining your own kind of your respect, and at the same time, you have this clear intention that just as you want others to respect you, similarly you also have that intention that you also kind of accept what the other person is or the way he is, uh, for that communication to be effective, though the perspectives could be different. I hope I understood it rightly. This is just the words how they're coming to me.
And it's harder because your first language is different from our first language. You are translating every word that's being said so you can understand. Whereas Victor and I are just speaking and we understand each other. If you were to talk to me in Hindi, I would be like, yeah, I got namaste and I got my name and maybe one or two other words, but the rest is totally bonkers to me because I don't understand. I don't know. Does that make sense to you, Shivali?
Yes, it does. Of course, it does. To most of the non-native speakers, that would be. But again, I would say there are many like me and many like me who have been exposed simultaneously to many languages at the same time from childhood. So that time, it doesn't really, like, as I said earlier, the nuances of, say, the Urdu language or the Hindi language would be obviously different from that of the English language. Yes, so I understand this. But at the same time, there are many who have been exposed to many languages at the same time, maybe three, four. I think for them, it is not that difficult.
I know a smile is universal. That's why, in case you haven't noticed, I smile a lot, and some of the things I articulate are pretty hard hitting. Some of them make you wonder, but the smile is always clear. When you see, no matter where I am, or what I'm doing, or what country, what have you, when they see the smile, it almost always evokes a smile in return.
Yes.
And it always does. You may not see that smile, but the person walking maybe a few feet behind you may see that smile from the other person because it's a mirrored thing. Just like laughter is a universal language. You hear someone laughing, you know they're saying something joyful. But when they start using Urdu and English and they're speaking, that's another thing. We don't necessarily understand that.
Carla, you said laughter. You said laughter, all right? Now,
Yeah.
Perception can vary the outcome significantly. If some people are laughing in a gathering, and I perceive it as they're laughing at me, I'll go in a box. I'll be afraid or I'll feel embarrassed. But if they're laughing with me, I'll be joyous. I'll be very happy. So even laughter can be perceived in so many ways. And I can draw a conclusion that, are they mocking me? Or are we really collectively mocking someone else? Or are we really celebrating? I mean, laughter has so many dimensions to it as well. And perception and perspectives on laughter can be very helpful too.
Right. But as we talk more, then this whole idea of language and communication becomes clearer. And with that, believe it or not, Kamran, we've been speaking an hour. So I'd like to go around and see what everyone's last words will be before I close the show. And I'll start ladies first.
Well, what I understood, little bit what I've understood. So, Victor, we can have another session on this. Whatever I've understood is that this is not something which is fixed. Perceptions and perspectives can be changed. This is what I'm understanding. Am I right?
Yes, they can both be
Whoa,
changed.
whoa. There isn't a question of whether I'm right or wrong. This is your understanding.
Okay, this
Like
is my
you could
understanding.
say yes, and then he could actually say no. And it really doesn't give one darn meaning. Because who is Victor? Just
Good.
another body saying something what he thinks.
I'm
Carla,
so
you're a
much
great
more than
referee.
that.
You're a great referee.
He will not smile now. He uses expressive eyes. And this is my understanding of him, my perception about him, that, when he has to make a point, then the smile is not there. First, he looks at you with single-minded focus. His voice changes completely. And then after saying it all, letting it sink into you, he gives that smile. You know?
Seals it
And
with a
you know
smile.
what's also important, Shivali, and it just came to me? No matter what we are saying to each other, and we think we are communicating, it could be me and my best friend, it could be me and Victor, it could be me and someone I never met before. Whatever we are communicating may not get through because of their own mind knowledge, how they perceive words. Comrade?
Don't be quick to judge. And second, I would like to add to that, communication is not an objective process.
What do you mean?
It's not as apparent as you think it is. So when you speak and people are confused or they take a different sense from it, don't be surprised. If you are, it means you view communication as a very objective process. It ain't. Sometimes you can say, I love you and offend someone. It's how you say it. And in what context are you saying it? So it is not an objective process. And don't be quick to judge. I think this to me is the most important. It'll lead us to be more patient and we'll try to understand the perspectives of others. And that is a sign of respect. If I don't want to listen to someone's perspective, I don't respect that person. Respect means listening to other perspectives with an open mind.
Very good. Victor?
When you're speaking to someone, just examine yourself. Examine how you feel about things, right? And understand that when you meet somebody, you almost instinctively, on some level, think that the person that you're talking to is better than you. That's what we all do. We all think that the person that we're talking to is better than us. So make it a practice in your communication. Let the other person know that they're okay. There's a book written years ago called I'm Okay, You're Okay. Since the other person is thinking that you are better than them anyway, help them understand through your communication and through your feelings and through your thought that you transfer to them by osmosis. Let them know that you're okay with them and you don't have any misgivings and you're not creating any unfavorable outcomes when you're talking to them. Because see, that goes a long way, because just like you feel that they're better than you, they feel that you're better than them. So help them understand that that's not the case.
Okay, but what happens if they have no idea what that means?
What I just said, every one of us have a certain way when we meet people, like the people that we're talking to, we know what we're thinking, and we're thinking they're better than we are. And they're thinking the absolute same thing. They're thinking that you're better than them. And so since you already know that that's the case, help them understand that, hey, you know what? You are just as good as I. But don't say that, but communicate that. And I think that the way that we have been taught that over the years universally is to walk in love. And love is not trying to get anything from anybody. Love is trying to give something to people.
True. But love could also be much more than that. It's our existence, and we give a word to it. We give a word to everything we come into contact with so we can communicate. But is communication really that effective? I don't know. What do you think, Shivali? Very quickly, phrase. I'm going to ask everyone that.
Yeah, I've just heard the word love. That's the last word that I'm hearing from this entire conversation. Love, when it's speaking of love, I think it says it all. Your perspective, your perceptions, whatever they might be, you are able to be in harmony with others when your intention is very clear. And that is love is the key. So if you're talking about peace, communication, then love is the key, and compassion will be a part of it. Compassion has to be a part of it.
But compassion, because I had a conversation with you before, and then we're going to get ready to get off, which we were talking, take action, take action. What you may have meant by the word action may not have been what I thought of and what I did. But it's what we communicate or think we communicate is what may cause the next war or the next confusion or the next step to peace. Kamran?
Read my lips, no more taxes. George Bush won the elections on this narrative, lost the elections on this narrative. Communication.
And is that how you're going to end the conversation for yourself?
No. I'm going to go on and on and on. Really, everything that has been said so far, your question was, is communication, effective communication, really possible? I think one can improve in this dimension progressively over time. And there are excellent communicators and benchmarks out there. TED Talks are one example. When you listen to them, they are speakers who put across their ideas in a compelling fashion. We can learn from that. And even they can improve. And I feel that communication, the quality of communication is the quality of our lives. And it's a lifelong learning process. And it's not just talking and listening. It's a much bigger subject, as Victor and Shivali and you have alluded to. So I think let's not take communication lightly. It is the very essence of life itself. And the better we communicate, the better our lives will become for ourselves and for others.
Very nice. Victor?
You want to be a powerful communicator? Then love fiercely. Be fierce in your love walk that no matter what, you're going to love, which means you're not going to be offended. Nobody's going to hurt your feelings. Love fiercely. And remember, when you're talking about love fiercely, somebody's got to love the wolf.
Okay. And with that, I think we had one marvelous conversation. Thank you so very much, Victor, Kamran, and Shivali. And when we speak, just remember that all minds are slightly different, and understanding what someone is saying is dependent on what you hear in your mind and how you react. And with that, I'll be back on MindPlore on Tuesday, and we will move forward to a better understanding of words and meaning. Can we all wave goodbye? Bye, everyone.